All righty, good morning, everyone. Today on the T podcast, we have Drake Pothier.
Got it. Nailed
Yeah, Drake Pothier. He is the co-owner of Village Deaux donut shops in Maurice, New Iberia, and Carencro area. So he is formerly the communications director of what was then called the Greater Lafayette Chamber of Commerce. He also served as president and CEO of the Houma-Terrebonne Chamber of Commerce for 5 years, amongst many other things. He's also owned a insurance agency, lots of stuff, but now he is slinging dough, and he's on the podcast today, so stick around and hang out. First, before we get started with the conversation, I'm going to go ahead and let you know about our presenting sponsor, Chase Group Construction. They take the lead and become your one point of contact for the entire design build process. So if you're looking to build something new or to renovate, they have a diverse portfolio of projects that range from medical centers, restaurants, multi-unit shopping centers, all that good stuff, tons of stuff. They built a lot, many things. And their website is chasegroupconstruction.com. Check them out. Great guys, and their video work on their website is really cool. So if you're interested in checking that out, go visit their website and maybe let them know that we sent you over there if you happen to use them or want to use them. Okay, so Drake, how is it going today?
Everything's great. It's a Friday. It's still hot and humid outside, which isn't great donut weather, but no, everything's awesome. If you can't have fun when you're in the donut business, I don't know where you can have fun. So that's what I like to try to remind myself of on a daily basis.
Yeah, so donuts are always good. And honestly, I can eat a donut, and it doesn't matter if it's hot or cold. It's a sweet treat, and I'm going to eat it. So go ahead and tell me a little bit about you. I kind of briefly mentioned some things, but where are you originally from? Are you originally from the Lafayette area? And if not, what got you to Lafayette? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
No, I was born and raised here and had a Broussard zip code, but technically in Lafayette, and went to UL, graduated in public relations, and really didn't know what to do with that. I thought I was always going to go work at a PR agency.
Right.
Every job that I applied for was at PR agencies, copy editor, graphic design or something. And I got really lucky in that the communication director for the Greater Lafayette Chamber of Commerce was moving on. I can't remember where she was moving on to. She had gotten a job elsewhere and the position opened up, and a friend of mine had happened to interview Rob Guidry, the former president of the Chamber of Commerce, for a school project. And he mentioned to her in the interview that he was hiring somebody, and did she know somebody? And she put me in touch with him. I interviewed. He offered me the job in the interview. I didn't even know what a chamber was, to be honest with you. It was so eye-opening for me and taught me so many life lessons that I still apply today, because you're just exposed to really the good, bad, and the ugly of the community in general. Like, just get to know so many things that you didn't know as a 20-year-old or a 21-year-old growing up in Lafayette or Acadiana. But I got to learn a lot about entrepreneurship and being a good business owner, and to see business owners like give of their time on a regular basis to go to meetings, and not just about the networking, but like how to better their community. And it really put an imprint on me. I fell in love with the idea of doing that, of doing chamber work. And when I had kind of hit my ceiling after 5 years, at the time, the chamber we had, I think, 8 or 9 employees. It is not what one Acadiana is now. And we had nothing to do with economic development other than like peripherally assisting Lita and others. And so I started looking in the chamber world. I'm like, what can I do? Where can I move up? And I was hired to be the vice president of the Fort Smith Chamber of Commerce in Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Oh, wow.
And so
did you take it?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. My wife and I had just gotten married in March. We moved to Arkansas in September and started working at that chamber. We had our daughter there about a year later. So we were only in Arkansas for a little under 2 years, but I absolutely loved it. It was kind of what One Acadiana has become, in that, although on a much smaller scale. We had done an economic development survey. We were doing fundraising for economic development projects and also doing the chamber side. So I was basically running the chamber while my boss was doing economic development. And it taught me how to manage a staff, how to run an organization, and dip my toe in the water when it came to economic development, which I really loved. It was very stressful, but I really loved it. And but it was very hard being newlyweds with a baby at that point and being 8 hours away from home. And so at that point, we just kind of started looking like, how can we get back to around Lafayette? It doesn't have to be Lafayette. And the Houma-Terrebonne Chamber reached out, or no, I found out that they were hiring, and I happened to throw my hat in the ring, and they flew me down for 2 interviews, offered me the position, and we moved down there in February of '09, I think.
Okay.
And that was just an eye-opening experience, because in Houma, the chamber is like, they advocate for like hurricane protection. This is not like just like, how do we make green spaces and all this other stuff. Like, this was real world. Like, our homes are literally washing away, our businesses are washing away, and the chamber was one of the primary advocates for coastal restoration, hurricane protection, in addition to all those other things like economic development and community development. And so it was radical. Like, I had to become an expert on all the coastal projects that community and that region of the state was working on. I got to do a lot of lobbying, which I had never done before, which was also eye-opening.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it was again very stressful, because I felt the world on my shoulders. Like, I just felt like, if we don't do our job, like, this is really going to impact people's lives, and it's not about networking. Even although we did that, it's not about having meetings and stuff and just letting people listen to their elected officials. It was so much more than I had ever really imagined. I never felt overwhelmed, but I felt the burden of what an important job meant to a community, and I really felt it. Like, if I would go to Target or Walmart, people who knew who I was, and I would hear it from them. Like, not in a bad way either. It was just people who were concerned, and they were literally terrified. Every hurricane season in Houma was a very stressful time. Still is.
Hurricane season in general,
in
stresses
general.
a lot of people here.
Yes.
Not so much, I guess, in Lafayette, because we don't really have a washing away of anything. We do have the fear of, the flash flooding and, potential tornadoes and some high winds. But, as you get closer to the coast, I couldn't imagine having property on the coast and having to worry about that every year. Like, I couldn't imagine that.
One of the first things they did when I moved down there was they put me in a little small prop plane, and they flew us out of the airport down there just to go over the coastline. And I'm telling you, it's 2 minutes. You're in the air for 2 or 3 minutes, and you're over the coast. It is right there. And you don't know it when you're on Martin Luther King Boulevard is the main thoroughfare that goes through Houma that has all the shops and stuff. And you're there, and you're like, oh, this could be Ambassador Caffrey and Lafayette. Like, you wouldn't know that if you got in a plane and in 4 or 5 minutes you'd be over the Gulf. And it's terrifying to know how close it was. But it was also, a lot of, you feel like you're accomplishing some things when you get some stuff done, and you work with a lot of partners. Like, we weren't in charge of trying to restore the coast, but we were an advocate for it. And there's a lot of awesome organizations that we worked with. And so that's where you learn how to be a good partner and figure out what you can do to support others who are doing the great stuff. And I think that's what that job taught me, is that I never really had the desire of being the person who was up front. Like, we would have events, like banquets, like all chambers do, and they would want me to sit on the table up front with all the volunteers. I'm like, that's not my role. I like being the guy behind the guy or gal, and I want to be there to support them, make them look great. I never needed to be the person who had the spotlight on them. I don't mind. I've talked in front of events that had 600 or 700 people. Does not bother me. I'm not afraid of that. But I liked the idea of helping them reach the goals that they had set aside or set for themselves up as an organization. Whatever my role was to do a lot of the dirty work that they needed to get done so that they could be the real advocates and get more things accomplished. And so that's what my role was, and I enjoyed that.
Okay. Yeah. There's a lot there. There's a lot to that history already, and there's still a lot of history to go. So I want to go back to Fort Smith, Arkansas, and having been plucked out of this area to go be and work in Fort Smith. Like, how is it, like, how were you able to adapt to a different area? I know cities of similar size can seem similar and all that good stuff, but you always hear like Lafayette area, Acadiana area has like this special kind of, community and like kind of glue to it.
It does.
And it does. But, other communities have their own version of that, whatever that looks like. It may not be exactly the same. But like having been plucked out of Lafayette to go to another area and to have to feel and almost take on a role as if this is your city that you've lived in all your life,
yeah,
and almost have to adopt it. How was that? Like adopting another city as your own to help improve it?
For my part, it was easy because I actually it didn't take me very long to acclimate myself to the community. I enjoyed living up there. I mean, the fall up there was amazing. Like it was an awesome. I have a near-death experience with ice that we can retell later, but that scared the heck out of me during the snowstorms and ice storms. But I enjoyed the idea of not knowing much about where I was moving to and then trying to be a sponge. And I guess the challenge that I faced is that for various reasons, the community was very skeptical of outsiders, and I think it's because they had been burned so many times over decades. Fort Smith is one of the economic hubs of Arkansas, and yet nobody knows about it. They talk about Fayetteville and they talk about Little Rock
and Bentonville.
And Bentonville. And Fort Smith was the manufacturing hub of the state. Only in the city, though, there was only 34 or 36,000 people, something like that. And so it had this, I guess, complex of always being overlooked by, when Fayetteville and Bentonville blew up in the early 2000s, and they became like this cool place. That's where, in fact, when they flew us in for the interview, my wife came with me. And we were at the airport getting, I just remember this story. We were at the airport getting our rental car, and the lady at the airport desk was like, or the car rental place was like, "Why are y'all here?" And I was like, "Oh, we're here for a job interview." And she's like, "Honey, you don't want to move here. You want to move to Bentonville."
Oh, wow.
And I told my soon-to-be boss that in the interview. I'm like, this is what people in the community are talking about. Like they had a brain drain, which Lafayette has experienced, and most communities have experienced at some point, where it was no longer the cool city to be. And so all the young people were moving elsewhere. And so that was one of the fights. Like, in fact, that was part of our economic development project as we developed a young leadership group. Not like Leadership Lafayette. They had something similar to that already. It was more of like what the 705 is.
Okay.
And where it was teaching young, up-and-coming business leaders in the community how to network, how to get engaged, where they can place their talents and find other people who are similar to them who have similar talents, and how do you leverage that as a community. And so we got to do some really cool projects like that. But it was a challenge because I think I would go into some meetings and introduce myself, and they knew with a last name like Poche, I was absolutely not from there, Arkansas. Yeah. And even though I don't have much of a Louisiana accent, I think that there was still some skepticism, like, where did you grow up? I'm like, not here. And so there was the old guard of the community, which took a little while to
penetrate,
let me in. But I think, when you show people that you're genuine and that you care about what they care about, you're able to win people over. And I've always felt that was a strength of mine, is like being able to relate, listen to what they have to say, and like not be so hard pressed to tell them how they're going to fix things. And I've made that mistake before too, where like I feel like I know everything and I'm going to go in there, I'm going to tell you this is what we need to do. And it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong, like they're never going to accept that. So you're automatically right. And so in Arkansas, it was a lot of learning, and my boss was also not from the area, and so he learned a lot of those lessons too. He had been there for 2 or 3 years before I got there, and he warned me about a lot of the things, like come in, be patient, you'll find your voice. It just takes a little bit of time, and then they'll come to accept you. And I feel like they did. We weren't there for very long, and I have regrets about that because one, I enjoyed the area. It was very beautiful, just absolutely beautiful scenery and stuff. But when the opportunity presented itself to go to Houma, to not only be 90 minutes away instead of 8 hours away, and to have an opportunity to be a CEO, we jumped at that.
Yeah, I would too. Man, so, and then to your point about people, adopting you or kind of like bringing you in and like fitting in, we're like that too in Lafayette. If there are people that come in out of town and try to start making changes, and we're apprehensive. Every community is like that. We have our little walls up. And what's interesting is I'm not originally from Lafayette. I grew up in Louisiana, more central Louisiana, if anything, Turkey Creek. And so I was only about an hour away from Lafayette, but the majority of the time spent as a kid was in Ville Platte and Alexandria. Mm-hmm. Lafayette was a big trip for us. And anytime we came to Lafayette, like my perspective of Lafayette was limited to Ambassador Caffrey, right into I-10. I didn't even register Carencro as a place at that time as a kid. Coming into the Lafayette area, get on Ambassador, head to the mall. You go to the mall, and then you go eat at Olive Garden, and then you go to Best Buy, and you go shop around for electronics. And then you get back on Ambassador and go back home. Yeah, that was my limited worldview of Lafayette. And then as I got a little older and I started driving on my own, I started making friends in some forums that I was a part of on the internet. This was before Facebook, before social media. And I was involved with like car shows and truck shows, and there were several here. And I was doing flyers for a lot of them. And so I developed friends here and came to Lafayette on my own several times and started experiencing like further down Ambassador, like the Buffalo Wild Wings area. And I was like, oh, Buffalo Wild Wings is like the coolest place I've ever been at the time. It's all right now. It's definitely lost its lure, but yeah. So and then having moved here in 2010 officially, and then starting this developing Lafayette thing in 2012, I've noticed there are some people that question where I'm from, and like, because my last name is not necessarily a Cajun name. It's Powers, P-O-W-E-R-S. Like, that's not a Cajun name. I'm not a Richard. I'm not a Fontenot. Even Fontenot's are kind of rare. It's more Ville Platte. But like, I'm not a Bustani. I'm not all these last names, and there's tons of them that are super Cajun-y and Frenchy. So yeah, it's kind of having to come into this area and then running a page that grew pretty quickly. I was like you. I was more of a sponge because I came from a small town where I have no room to talk of like, well, how to make the town better. Yeah. So I come here and I'm like, I just want to be a part of the town. I want to get in and get plugged in, and that's kind of what I did. But we're at a spot right now where I want to get my sponsors mentioned, my last sponsor, and then I want to go into how did the switch happen from chamber work and city work and, all that good stuff to donuts. So before we get there, go ahead and mention my sponsor. It is the Music Academy of Acadiana. So they are Acadiana's top choice for music lessons. So if you're a parent that has a child that is interested in music, or you think they might be interested and you want to try it out, or you may be interested yourself, check it out. They teach of all instruments. They have piano, guitar, drums, violin, saxophone. They can help you improve your voice, even flutes, any air instrument. And also, if you're a behind-the-scenes type of person, they also teach audio production. They have an in-house award-winning audio recording studio. They have a very experienced staff of instructors that cater to all students of all ages and styles. They've appeared on major music competitions like American Idol and The Voice. It's founded by UL Lafayette Music School graduate Tim Benson, who is also a part of a 2000s era of music cover band called The Criers. And they tour around the South Louisiana area. Really cool band. Ultimately, their goal is to make music lessons fun and educational and to help foster the next generation of musicians and creative thinkers. So their website is musicacademyacadiana.com. All righty. So, Drake, I am curious now, how did you go from, and I'm pretty sure there's a bridge somewhere in there, but how did you go from slinging government and business data and information and meetings to slinging donut dough, like, and all that good stuff? Like, I'm curious on the path that you took. It feels so, like, different. It almost feels like, I don't know, you tell me, like, how did that happen?
It's radically different. So I was still working in Houma, running that chamber, and I had actually had 2 separate opportunities to move on to continue doing chamber work in other communities. One was in the McKinney, Dallas area.
Oh, wow.
Which was,
that would have been big time.
And then the other was in, I think it's either Columbus or Columbia, Georgia. I always forget the name. And so we were evaluating those opportunities. The Georgia one was a more likelihood. I was a finalist in Texas. I was the guy to go to Georgia. The CEO was retiring. He wanted to bring in an up-and-coming chamber exec in the country, and I had a lot of connections in the chamber world at that time. And so he viewed me as his heir apparent. He wanted to train me for a few years. And then so my wife and I were considering these opportunities. At that time, we had 2, or I can't remember if we were on our 3rd child or not. Somewhere around those times, we either had our second was born already, and then I think we were expecting Ben, our 3rd. And we kind of did some self-evaluation. Like, if this was going to be our life, we were going to move every couple of years when a new opportunity presented itself, because there's always a bigger chamber or other nonprofit that wanted to work with us. And then honestly, I think a lot of people who are in the nonprofit world who work for boards of directors and stuff will tell you that it is extremely inspiring. I already talked about that, to work for a lot of boards, but it's also a big challenge.
Yeah.
You're constantly changing your focus when the president of the board changes. So every year they would have new ideas, and so you would have to start from square one whenever they took over. And so it was a lot of change. I never got to go into a meeting and fully advocate for what I wanted to advocate for. I was always advocating for what the board wanted. And I could never speak for myself. And there's something to be said about that. Like I told you earlier, I like being the guy behind the guy, but at the same time, like, I also envied them that they got to go to the meetings that they wanted to. I had to go to meetings that I was their representative. So if they couldn't go, I was there. And so I had started having this idea of, like, what can we do to potentially find something else? And in fact, I had already talked to, like, the Small Business Development Center about starting my own lobbying firm or communication firm. And I was like, I can't give up the security of a steady paycheck. And out of nowhere, a chamber member who was an insurance agent in Houma called me to tell me that an insurance agency was for sale in Lafayette, that he thought that I would be a good fit. And he put me in touch with the corporate people. And it was a lot. I say it in 2 seconds. It was a lot of wrangling. It did not come easy. But we looked at it as an opportunity, A, to get back to Lafayette, which was ultimately one of our goals, and B, to be a business owner where I didn't have to work for a board. I got to be at the board table. And that was very appealing to me. And so we let that take us where it went, and it all came together, and I took over my agency on January 1st of 2013. I resigned from the chamber in October of 2012, and found out what it was like to sit in my own seat and run a business instead of running an organization. And it was radically different. I mean, I made so many mistakes.
We all do, and we still do.
Yes, I still do. I still make a ton of mistakes. But it was really interesting. And although I found out literally on my first day there that I wasn't sure that I was cut out for the insurance world, but we still stuck it. I mean, we lasted 8 years doing that. But it was, I enjoyed being able to make my own decisions about my staff without having to consult volunteers. I got to market wherever I wanted to market without having to consult volunteers. It was like I get to do whatever I want to do with the money that my business is bringing in. Aside from the fact that there was, it was a franchise, it was corporate that I'd have to answer to. Yeah. And that's one of the things that actually pushed us in the direction of the donut shop. Like, not to jump 8 years, but like that's really where it stood, is that we were always at the beck and call of the ebb and flow of the insurance industry and the company that I worked for. And so when we started talking in the fall or the summer of 2019 about how can we leverage this business to have a side business that would, one, that we could just let kind of run itself. We were looking for a mostly absentee owner business, and but that could help us as a family, not as a business, as a family, to buffer the ebb and flow of the insurance industry. And so we started looking around for businesses that were for sale, and we found Village Deaux. We looked at a handful of businesses at the time, and we started secret shopping them to figure out which one was the right one for us. And we fell in love with Village Deaux. The Maurice location, our OG location, is very small. It's 1,100 square feet. It's built in what was formerly an AC repair shop. It is not a restaurant. Like, it's very clear it was not intended to ever be a restaurant. But we loved how supportive the community was. And were
you living in the Maurice area at the time?
No, we were still living in Youngsville at the time. And where we still are today. It was just, but my wife's family lives in Maurice, like right down the street. Okay, so like we had connections there. And there was, the whole discussion that we had earlier about moving to Arkansas and people, treating you as an outsider. Like, we had a little bit of that when we took over, because the original owners were locals. And so when we were there, they're like, "Are y'all from Maurice?" And we always had to hedge it, like, "No, but my wife's family lives a mile down the road." So we always wanted them to think that we weren't some like outsider that were just looking.
You had a local presence.
Yes, that we were just looking to run a business and not really, put our heart into it. And so when we ended up closing on that business in February of 2020, and so I would work at the agency during the week. My wife would stay at the donut shop most of the week while the kids were in school. And then on the weekends, I would go work in the donut shop, and she would stay home with the kids. Or if we were busy, she would come and work with us. And it got to the point that it did not take long that on Sundays, when I was like closing out our books and like making a plan for the week, that I was dreading going back to work on Monday.
On insurance.
I just liked being in that shop. And like
was it the smells?
Yes, that's part of it. That's part of it. It's funny. After we owned the shop for about 6 months, I went to my doctor, and she's like, "It looks like you're enjoying your business a little too much." I was like, "Thanks." So it was the feel of it. Like, there's a youthful exuberance of being in that kind of business because it was creative in a way.
Okay. Yeah.
I got to solve problems so easily. Like, whereas when you're in insurance, if somebody's ticked off about their claim, or they hate that their rates went up, that even though I had nothing to do with that, I would get chewed out for everything. And
you were the face of your own business.
I was the face of the business, and like so, I'm not a thick-skinned person. I'm a people pleaser. I want people to be happy, and there's literally no one who's happy with insurance. Like, you don't want to pay for it.
You're forced to have it for once.
Yes.
And you can't. You don't have you have very little control over how much you spend on insurance. You can switch, but that insurance company may not be that good,
right?
And
you're still beholden to somebody else.
Yeah. So yeah,
I wasn't what I think the company wanted anyway, because I am not a salesperson. I had some of my best friends, my whole leadership class, would tell me, "You're the only insurance agent who's never tried to sell me anything." And I'm like, that's why I was a communicator. I was good at my knowledge of insurance. And I always thought that at some point the fire would take off with my general demeanor and communication skills that people would want to do business with us. And it happened, but not on the
not on the scale you think.
When you have other agencies who are literally calling hundreds of people a day to switch and telling them that they're going to save money, that's what sells. Like, me being a nice guy is not good enough, and so it was not working. Like, we had good years, and it was a successful business most of the time, but the model is shifting. Like, they want growth. They are not satisfied with just being stagnant, and I could see that was not where I was headed. And then I'd go on the weekends to Village Deaux, and I would see these regulars at the window, and they asked me how my wife and kids were. And
they weren't complaining about their rates.
Well, even when somebody wasn't happy, they're like, oh, the donut wasn't good that day. I'm like, here's another couple of donuts. Like, that's an easy fix. I can't do that with insurance.
You had people say the donuts were not good?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it happens. Look, you can't please everybody. And that's actually one of the biggest challenges is when you put so much of yourself into this that it's hard not to take it personally when somebody doesn't like what you do.
I take a lot of stuff personal.
It's hard,
on my comment section. Yes. You'll see it. I take a lot of stuff personal.
And you have to try to stay positive. And that is, whereas every day at the agency, I was almost mentally preparing myself for the anguish of getting fussed at. And some people are just built for that. Like, my father could have been a hell of an insurance agent because he could care less, and he would have told them exactly how he felt about them too. And I'm not that way, and it was eating at me. And so, like, when somebody doesn't like what we do now, it pains me in a way that I'm like, we underperformed, or maybe they just don't like it. Whatever reason it is, it still pains me because I know that we're always at least trying to do the right thing and trying to do the best. And sometimes you fall short. Like, we're human. We make mistakes. It's a live dough. Like, it's a living, breathing entity. And so, like, you can't have it the same exact way every day. You try your best. And that's all we ask of our staff now is, like, do your best. You're going to fall short sometimes. Mistakes are going to happen as long as you don't make them the same day in and day out. Like, you can't make the norm being mistakes. But yeah, so I had this juxtaposition of myself, like the agency where I dreaded going to, and then my donut shop, which I loved. And we survived COVID, which was horrific for the business. Like, it was just rough, man. I mean, we bought the business in February of 2020. We shut down in April for a whole month because no one was coming, and we kept all our staff. We actually kept paying them. But because we didn't want them to leave, and we knew at some point we were going to reopen, and then we reopened in May, and drive through only for a while. Like, we did all the things that we could to protect ourselves, not knowing anything that was going on really, and the business survived and then started to thrive. It didn't take us long. Like, we really, once we came out of that summer, we replaced a couple of the staff, we added some staff, and we really started investing in the business. And then we saw it just took off. Like, I think there was this clamor for people to see that shop living to the potential that it had. It is in a pass-through area between South Lafayette and Abbeville. That's Maurice is that, and Maurice is blowing up. Like, there's houses going up everywhere because it's got a good school system and everything. So we took advantage of the opportunity of people wanting to have a thriving donut shop, and we were like, we can do this if we try really hard and invest our time and energy into it. And the funny thing is my wife and I had never worked a day in a restaurant in our lives. So, like, we didn't know what we were doing. We were learning as we go, and we would make mistakes, and we made tons of them. But we loved almost every second of it.
Was there another donut shop in Maurice?
No.
So is it still the only one?
Yeah, now there's more. There's other breakfast places and coffee places locally.
Yeah, I mean, there's Classic Cup.
Classic Cup is right down the street from us. But
they don't do donuts.
They don't do donuts. Yeah. So, yeah, we're still the only donut shop anywhere near there. And
Lafayette has several.
Lafayette has a ton. Yeah. I mean, not as it's not like a Starbucks on every corner.
Right.
But that's kind of like what we've envisioned our model to be too, is that, we debated about whether, Maurice is not a village anymore. FYI, newsflash.
Newsflash, buddy.
Maurice is bigger than that. We kept the village name, and we actually talked to some marketing people about that, about whether or not Aileen Bennett, shout out. We talked to a handful of people about should we change the name or not, and like the recommendation was that you can be part of a village no matter where you are. Yes, within a community. And we want to be that. You and I have talked about that earlier. Like we like getting to know the customers that we have. And yes, we want the random customers to show up too, who might not ever come back for one reason or another, but we like that we are a regular fixture in the lives of our regular customers, and the village part of that plays into that. Like our customers are not just a transaction, and we want to build a relationship with them because that's how you make this successful. It's hard making money on a donut that costs $1. So like you have to want people to want to come back to you on a regular basis and not only spend that $1, but then buy a little something extra and then tell their friends, like, this is my place. I think it's funny that, I know a lot of these places that, like you see polls on Facebook all the time about like, what's your favorite pizza? And it's, people get they're so
passionate
about everything.
One or two particular places.
Yes.
And you kind of do the polls situation every year during Mardi Gras. The thing comes up. Where's your favorite king cake? Right. And then you have the debate. Yeah. Is a donut a king cake?
Right. And we live through every single one of those. And we have our passionate followers, and then we have the people who absolutely say that we're not anywhere near any of the other shops, or we don't compare to what others. And like it's all based on their own personal experience. It's like. And it is that I don't take personally. Like I feel like if we're given an opportunity to compete against somebody else, then I think that we can go head to head with anybody. But some people just have personal taste. And the other thing too, I think, which is more important, it's a lesson that we are taking with us as we continue to grow, is that people want that experience with their family, and that's what ties them to the business. Not just donuts, most businesses. If you develop a relationship with that business and your kids develop that relationship with the business, then that's how they become passionate and want to fight people on Facebook in your defense.
Yeah, because it becomes a tradition. It becomes, part of the family.
If they grew up with it, Meshes has been around forever, absolutely forever. And so if you were 8 years old and your dad or mom brought home Meshes on the weekends, and that's your place. And I respect the heck out of that. Yeah. But that's what we're trying to do too. And so like we like to try to make sure that we are communicating with the kids when they come in the shop. Like, what do you want today? And if we find out it's their birthday and their parents are getting them like a dozen holes, like we'll run to the back and make them something. It won't be the most ornate kind of donut in the world, but we want them to feel like it's special for them. And like that's how you build a relationship with generations of family members. And I feel like that's the foundation that we're trying to build. Because it's not just about like making sure that we're successful this month or this year. Like we're in here for the long game, and the relationship is key. Like I don't see any other way around it.
Yeah. So I love this the build up of it so far and where you guys are going. There was a couple of things you had mentioned about the few people that have said that the donuts were not good. Let me tell you something. I have had my fair share of donuts in my life, and while I've had some donuts that were not great, at the end of the day, for me, the worst donut is still a good donut.
I could not disagree with you. I could not agree with you more. I agree. Like I have had subpar for sure. In fact, my wife and I went on a cruise with the kids a couple of years ago, and I took a picture of a donut that I had on the breakfast buffet, and I'm like, we can do better than this. Like it wasn't great. But yes, it's fried bread that's got sugar on it. Like it's hard to find something else that isn't better than that.
And then to the point of king cake and all that, my wife, we were talking about this yesterday because I'd mentioned that I was going to have you on, and she was like, I like Village Deaux. She's like, and she grew up on Meshes. She's like, I like Village Deaux. Like their king cake, I love their king cakes. It's as close to what I remember as a child that I can get. And she's like, then we kind of, the conversation got a little deeper of, and she's like, I don't understand why people say donut king cakes are not king cakes. I said, look, I know that's how people are. And then we come to the realization that, and some people will probably argue this because there's always room to argue every single thing, is that even traditional king cake is just dough, cinnamon, butter. It's just a cinnamon roll. Right. I mean, it's a big fancy cinnamon roll at the end of the day. You can argue, they might have a priest bless the king cakes or something. I don't know what the deal is, but donuts it's still dough. It just the heating source is different. It's and it might be a little fluffier, but in my opinion, it's all good. It's sugar, it's cinnamon, it's glaze, it's icing. I don't. So the thing about people arguing about king cake and it being a donut or not a donut, it doesn't irk me that much. But it's just interesting to watch where people's stance will be and how they justify. Yeah. It's amazing.
We get a lot of the comment that it's just a big donut, and we don't try to. We try to stay positive as much as we possibly can. And then some people who are so entrenched in that's fine too. King cake season is a long time. There's no reason why you can't go get, I love Keller's king cakes too.
Yeah.
And so go get Keller's one week and then go get a donut king cake the next week. Like you're exactly right though. Like there are so many similarities to other, baked goods to entrench yourself that it's what I do is absolutely not a king cake, but what you get at Keller's or any other bakery is an absolute king cake. It doesn't make any sense to me, but whatever they need to do to make themselves happy, if you want to go get that stuff every day, that's cool too.
Yeah.
We like to offer an alternative, and so it's not just traditional king cakes. We do a lot of specialty stuff. And I would still say we sell more traditionals than non-traditionals, but we sell a ton of non-traditional king cakes. It's because people want an alternative. If you're 40 years old, you've lived through 40 Mardi Gras. Do you want to have the same king cake day in and day out? Probably not. And king cake season, especially like next year, is long. It goes into March. That's a long period of time. It's 2 months of eating the same thing day and day. Why not try something new? Yeah. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. That's fine too.
Yeah. Look, I've had several types of king cakes, and I still have several more around the area that I want to try. But we always make room to get a donut shop king cake, whether that be a Meshes or Village Deaux or some of the other places. I know Cajun Market Donuts, and then there's Miko's. I don't know if Miko's does king cakes, but they all have their specific flavors, and then there are times where we just want the quote unquote traditional king cake. We'll go to Keller's and get one, and then last year and the year before that, Great Harvest Bread Company has been blowing up, and their blueberry king cake has been phenomenal. And so now we want one of those every year. So we try to in that time span of Mardi Gras, which can be short some years, like you said, long next year, we try to at least get at most three or four throughout the season and get one of each where we want. And so we'll get one from Village Deaux, we'll get one from Keller's, and all that good stuff.
We're seeing more and more people give us shout outs on Facebook that they're having king cake parties at their offices where they're each bringing a little something different. And that's the cool thing too. Have a king cake buffet. What's wrong with that?
I know nothing's wrong with that.
Variety is the spice of life. Live it up. There's so many cool things. Great Harvest is a great example, no pun intended, that they do that. Theirs are so awesome. What they do is amazingly fresh. And so even I, as a business owner who benefits from my king cakes selling as much as they possibly can, I can see that other people are doing things. We can't be a specialist in everything. People have asked us, why don't you do some traditional baked king cakes? I'm like, well, Maurice, I don't have the room. Literally don't have the room. They want us to do croissants. I'm like, where? Where would I put that?
Right.
There's no place. You can't be a specialist in everything. I think we're good at what we do. And so we're going to focus on those kind of things, but we do like to mix it up, and we'll come up with new flavors that we've never done before just to see if it works. And the banana pudding one took off 2 years ago, absolutely took off. And we had people driving in from New Orleans. This lady last year drove in from New Orleans 3 times to Maurice to pick up banana pudding king cakes.
And she skipped over Carencro?
Yes. It's like that, but that's where she wanted to come to the Maurice location. Okay. And so we knew her name by the end of the season because she just kept coming back.
Wow.
So it's, look, you find what you like and then you stick with it. Again, that's why we want to try to reach more people and find more people who like what we do. And we're not going to please everybody, but if we're making the majority of our customers happy and that they're coming back on a regular basis, like the other businesses are doing the same thing, and that we can't be on every corner. So there's plenty of space in the marketplace for other donut shops and
there's plenty of room for more donuts.
Yes, yeah.
Ideally, it would be local shops like you and Meshes that expand and Cajun Market and Miko's. But even if a national chain does come in, I think Shipley's was supposed to come to Lafayette area, and they backed out. You go to Texas and you see a Shipley's almost like you see a McDonald's. It's like everywhere, and they're good. But it's the different vibe. Shipley's is very quick. You go in, there's usually a line, and you get what you got to get, and you get out. Yeah. And Village Deaux and Meshes, you have a little bit more of that personal experience, and same with the other local shops, and you have more of that relationship building aspect of it. So you kind of get the best of all worlds. And then some people like the quick get in and get out. And you guys, I'm pretty sure if somebody's in a rush, you let them get in and get out.
We do that. We prepare our staff to try to fit the needs of whatever the customer is. Some of them they're on their way to work or school. They are fitting us into their schedule. We need to fit them into our, do what you can to get them in and out, but also try to still be warm and friendly. Welcome them. If you know their name, say hi. In a lot of the cases, we know what they're going to order before they come in anyway. We see their car in the drive-thru, and we're like, go grab Miss Susie's cinnamon roll latte, and she likes the donut of the month. We're going to put that together for her too. And if she doesn't want it, we just go put it back. We know what the customers are like, and so it helps them move things along. And I think that, again, that's what they want, is they want a relationship. They're also, when you build a relationship, you with your customers, you are able to get a little bit of they give you more leeway to make mistakes. They're not so quick to jump down your throat and tell you how terrible you are. The people who we do get that kind of feedback from are people who are one and dones anyway. And I still take their criticism. We don't want somebody to have a bad experience
with a grain of sugar.
Yes, I like that. I need to put that on our next staff shirt. But that's why we like having a relationship, because they'll tell us, they'll DM us or email us and look, it wasn't that great today. I don't want to tell anybody else, because we're still going to come back. And we love that. We love having that relationship with our customers, because they give us grace, and we try to do the same too with everybody else, and I think that's missing in a lot of.
Oh yeah. I agree with the relationship building side of it. And we have plenty of, some of our best sponsors and advertisers were built through long conversations and meeting with them and building the relationship before we've even asked for any money. And we've made mistakes along the way, and they're almost immediately like, oh yeah, no worries. It's all good. Just, do a little something extra for us. And I call it, everybody calls it the lanyap. Yeah. I do as much lanyap as I can. So that kind of goes a long way. We're at 47 minutes. I want to ask one more topic for a question. I guess that sounded weird. To have one more question for the next topic is, as far as expansions go and locations and growing, you guys started out in Maurice, New Iberia, and then now Carencro. How does that look for you guys? Are you guys going to continue to grow, or do you feel like you're at a point where this is kind of like the most that you can handle at the moment? What does that look like for growth of Village Deaux?
I think we learned a lot over the past 2 years since we started Carencro. So Carencro, we made that purchase in August of 2022, and it opened in December. So it's now a year and a half old. And I think like I said, we've made a lot of mistakes, and I think we thought that we were so successful with 2 shops that it doesn't matter. We'll just keep expanding, and the third won't make a difference, and a fourth won't make a difference, and that's not true. We quickly found out that having 3 not only spread us very thin, but our management team really thin. And we didn't, I've already told you, we had no prior restaurant experience. So we kept looking at sales. I'm like, sales are good. And then I look at the bank account. I'm like, why is the bank account so low? And it's because we didn't know what we were doing. We knew how to present a good product. And so what we did last summer is we hired restaurant consultants to help us stabilize the business and put us in a position that when we're ready that we can expand, but not to the detriment of the 3 existing shops. And that's what had happened, is that Carencro, while it was doing fine, it was hitting the numbers we thought that we needed to hit. There was just something off with the expense side of things that was ultimately going to damage the business if we didn't fix it. And the consultants told us, you have a very successful restaurant. You have a very terrible business model. And we didn't know. Like they're blunt. We're still working with them. They're blunt as heck. And they tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And so we've had to make changes, like training programs. Like we're as much of a mom and pop organization that we are, we needed to have some sort of corporate threads going through the organization so that we weren't working every day in the shop. Like we work every day on the business, but we were literally, working 60-hour weeks with kids, and we were waiting on customers, not trying to figure out why we weren't making enough money in that transaction to justify all we were putting into it. And so they've educated us on that. So we've developed the back office side of things that has put the shop in a position to be successful, not only as a restaurant, but as a business. And we're still working on that. It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
It's completely a work in progress. But I feel like we're in a position now where an expansion, even though I still don't think we're ready for it yet, like we're still coming out of that. But an expansion is feasible in the sense that I feel like we know what we're doing more now than we did a year ago.
Yeah.
And if we would have grown again, I don't know how that would have looked. It wouldn't have been good. I'm optimistic. I always am optimistic, but it would have been really hard on us. And I do feel like we're in a really good position now that we like to look for opportunities. In the cases of New Iberia and Carencro, it was existing donut shops that weren't making it, and they were up for sale. And so we saw it as an opportunity to expand our brand. And so do we keep an eye out for those opportunities, or do we actually look to grow? And we get messages all the time from across the state, really, and even into Texas, people who want us to go into their communities.
Wow.
And first of all, I love being wanted. How awesome is that? But number 2 is that I look at it as an opportunity for the business. I want to build a legacy for our kids and for the brand. And I'm not in the chamber world where I'm impacting community development or economic development, but I feel like we're still impacting a lot. We have 30 employees now.
Yeah.
Like we like to take care of them in a way I feel like most of them have not been taken care of before. And because they take such good care of us, like it's just such a good relationship we have with the majority of our staff. And so I like the idea of being able to spread that beyond where we are. We just have to be ready for when the opportunity presents itself, and we'll go from there. But I think that what we do is replicable. It can be done again.
Yes, it can be done again.
And I feel like we're in a position to be able to do that now more so than ever.
Awesome. Man, I have really enjoyed getting the lay of the land of how you went from chamber to donut maker. Really quite fascinating. And it's you can tell just by listening to you that you have that strong itch still of community involvement. Like it's you talked about it a lot without you said the quiet part out loud without realizing it. And,
well, the shame of the last year has been really the last 2 years have been so hard on us trying to grow and get the shops to produce the way they need to produce that I've taken myself out of that community game like that I used to be in. Like I used to enjoy going to meeting, the One Acadiana, like I feel horrible. Like I'm outing myself. I'm on the board of directors of One Acadiana and I haven't been to a meeting in months. It's horrible because I can't. Like it's really hard, but I see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I want to be, involved in that whatever capacity they need us to be involved in. And again, it goes back to our name as the Village. Like we've participated in stuff in Carencro, New Iberia, we're doing the same. We love being involved with the schools, and certainly in Maurice. And I think that, as people see that we are invested in our communities, that we care about that, whether it's the teachers or the police officers or even just the families, like we want to be entwined in our communities in a way that it would be really hard for us to not be, to take us out. And I miss that part of it. So yes, that's certainly something that's in the next phase of freeing up our time. So I won't be frying as much, but I'll be sitting in on meetings and figure out what else we can do to help our communities.
Yeah. I love it. Well, I think it's a good time to go ahead and close out. Drake, it was really great to have you on to talk about Village Deaux and the kind of lead up to you guys doing it. And I don't know if it was mentioned, but I guess it's fair to mention it now that you and your wife are both owners of Village Deaux. So
right.
when you say we, you and your wife and then your staff. But yeah, it's a great little business. I love it. I'm glad you're in Carencro because that's where we live.
Yep.
And I appreciate that because having a good donut shop, even though there is another one in Carencro, just having options that are good without having to go into Lafayette, is nice. And having that kind of that village reach without having to go into the city,
That's right.
Other than that, man, it was great having you on. If you guys that are listening want to check out Village Deaux, obviously you can drive there one morning and get you a donut or two and some coffee. Or you can check out their website. It is villagedeaux.com. Village spelt like it is. Deaux is spelt the French way, Deaux. So if you're not from here, don't type in Deaux the normal way. Village Deaux, the Cajun way. That's the best way I can say it. Just Google it, Village Deaux, Maurice, and you might be able to even spell it Village Deaux like the normal way, like the non-Cajun way. And Google, if Google's good at what they do, they'll lead you to the Village Deaux. That's the correct one.
I need to register that URL.
You
to cover my bases.
You need to grab Village Deaux, the regular English version, so that all roads lead back to you guys.
Yes.
But other than that, man, it was great having you on.
Thank you so much. I had fun.
Yeah, appreciate your time. With that, have a great weekend, and I look forward to getting some donuts. In fact, Bennett, my little boy that's off screen here, he has a friend that's spending the night tonight, and so tomorrow morning, I may go out and get him donuts.
I'll give him a heads up.
Yeah. We won't get we're not going to strip you guys out of donuts. We're just going to grab a handful,
I'm not going to tell you no. You keep buying. I tell that people all the time. They're like, I have a big order. I'm like, I'm not going to stop you. You keep
going, right? All right, Drake, it was a pleasure having you on, man. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Ben.
All right, that's it, guys. You'll have a great weekend as well, and we'll see you on the next one.